Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, June 26, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Ryan Grimm, D.C. Bureau Chief at the Intercept and co-host of Counterpoints. Talking about Jamaal Bowman's loss and Julian Assange's plea deal. Meanwhile, primary results, that same Jamaal Bowman becomes the first member of the squad unseated by a Republican bankrolled conservative Democrat at all. Meanwhile, Trump-endorsed candidates lose in Utah, South Carolina, and Colorado. The Supreme Court rejects Republican lawsuit to prevent feds from requesting social media moderate disinformation. U.S. aid pier is working once again, but aid is stuck on the Gaza beach as Israel's use of aid trucks has halted aid distribution over security concerns. Pill mill Ronnie Johnson Jackson earns a congressional ethics investigation. Oklahoma Supreme Court stops would-be first publicly funded religious charter school. Biden to pardon vets who were convicted of having gay sex prior to 2013. Not that long ago. Feds are now probing Mayor Eric Adams' China trips. This guy had quite a career as a Brooklyn, what was he?
Borough president.
A borough president. Seems like the best job in the world, based upon how many trips people kept paying for him to go on. AARP poll has Trump up in Nevada. Even more so when RFK Jr. gets into the race. And a Washington Post poll shows that a plurality of swing state voters polled trust Trump to protect democracy more than Joe Biden. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Emma is out today. It is Hump Day. There is a lot of consternation, I think, that folks have over what happened last night with Jamaal Bowman. I've already seen, I think this from yada, yada, yada on the IM. I've gained nothing but slight optimism in each election cycle since 2018. I've always tried to stay positive, even just slightly. The Bowman loss is brutal, and it's not going to be the last time a progressive facing down a nine-figure funded opponent in their primary feels pointless. I mean, look, there's this reasons for optimism, the sort of journey to create a more progressive Democratic Party, basically just to create a better vehicle out of the, for better or for worse, really only vehicle available, at least on a federal level, to getting more progressive policies. And this project to make it more progressive was never going to be a straight trajectory upwards. Nothing is. There's a lot of reasons why Jamaal Bowman lost. One of the more obvious ones is comes in an envelope of 14 million, 15 million reasons. But there are other things too, and we'll talk to Ryan Grimm about those a little bit more, and really more the implications of this. Jamaal Bowman won in 2018 in a different district than he lost in last night. He won in 2022. Excuse me. He won in 2020 in a different district than he lost in last night. And he won in 2022 in a different district than he lost in last night, and from the one he won in 2020. There's been that many changes. Now, the changes haven't been dramatic, but in 2022, he underperformed if you look at the numbers in retrospect. And part of that was a function of, frankly, I mean, the median income in Westchester County is something like $520,000. It's extraordinary.
Significantly different in, say, the North Bronx and Mount Vernon.
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, that may describe it more, that may be as important as anything else. There's also been criticism of Bowman for not being in touch with that part of the district. Again, after 2020, his district moved a little bit north, more into the sort of like more wealthy suburbs. And so there's a lot of reasons for this. I don't know if a better candidate in terms of, one who was more attuned to providing local service, et cetera, could have withstood the onslaught from Latimer. It also, and we'll talk more with Grimm about this, it also gives you a sense of like how votes are weaponized. Because Jamaal Bowman votes against the infrastructure bill, but really he's voting against the infrastructure bill because it was split up. And he was really, in many respects, hewing to the original deal and vision that the Biden administration had, that they essentially caved on. I mean, so in reality, Bowman was very faithful to the greatest ambitions that the Biden administration had. Maybe more faithful than the Biden administration was. But if you look at the ads, and it was almost impossible not to, even though I'm not in his district.
No, me neither.
You look at the ads. I mean, people in New Jersey said this to me. You look at the ads that Latimer posted with those millions of dollars that he got from AIPAC and AIPAC affiliated PACs. And they were all about Bowman voting against Biden's bills. Now, there's also an argument that Bowman should have spent more time talking about Latimer vowing to stop Joe Biden's tax plans. They weighed in more on the money coming from AIPAC. People are going to second guess this. But the point is that watch for the spin that comes out of this. Already on CNN, I was watching last night, and they were making it about his positions on Palestine. Now, certainly there's a significant, at least for this district, Jewish population, particularly in the more suburban areas. And they may or may not have had an issue with what Bowman was saying, but that's certainly not what Latimer ran on. They did about everything they could to hide, at least, from semi-informed voters, that all this money was coming in from AIPAC affiliated outside expenditures. So that's what's going on. Does it suck? Yeah, it sucks. Because you want a blue state and you want a safe blue seat to be as progressive as possible. And let's put it this way. I mean, for people who've always been skeptical of or have decided at one point that it was in their best interest to be skeptical of the squad because they were not sufficiently whatever it is that they wanted them to be, understand that Republicans and conservative Democrats just spent record-breaking sums of money to take one of them out. And they're about to do the same thing with Cori Bush. And they do that for two reasons. One, they don't want these Congress people there voting, and they don't want their views to be espoused by other Congress people. And this is both a first order, let's get rid of a couple of votes, it'll make them weaker, and a second order, and let's send a message to others who might be thinking about it that we will come after you in the same way. The money, money expenditures don't just work in like, I'm going to buy, George Latimer's votes. They didn't have to. George Latimer's just going to follow the money. The money doesn't have to follow him. But it also functions to scare people that it'll be spent against them.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how infrequently the connection is drawn between the Democrats' difficulty turning out, say, the black vote, and the fact that right before our eyes, the white suburbs put a guy, basically Westchester dictates to Mount Vernon now. And, good luck having Latimer turn out the vote come fall. And I don't know.
I mean,
it's a classic city.
I mean, Bowman, didn't necessarily get the vote out either in the way that one would have wanted. I mean, so I don't know. We need to see more numbers, I think, and we'll probably get a better analysis down the road to just sort of compare how mobilized, folks in Mount Vernon, folks in the Northern Bronx were. But certainly, like you looked at those early voting numbers that we had talked about yesterday, and they looked bad. There were more voters that came from Scarsdale, which is like it's a fraction of the size of, 20% of the size of Mount Vernon. There was more votes that came from Scarsdale prior to the Mount Vernon in terms of early voting. So now, again,
what party do they want, though?
You give me $20 million, and I have a big margin of error to drive those people out. I mean, honestly, we're talking 5,000-6,000 votes.
I mean, this is the same as when Schumer said, for every a vote we lose in the city, we'll gain, votes in the suburbs. I
mean, arguably, but this is a race between two Democrats.
Right, but I mean, does Hillary and all the people that stuck their oar in, they're constructing a more suburban party?
I mean, arguably, again, because these are already Democrats. They're already part of the party.
Yeah.
They are constructing really a more conservative elected class.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily changing the Well, and then ultimately that changes, who is attracted to it in terms of voting.
Yeah.
But this is a problem that we've had for years. I mean, and this is a step back. So here is Jamaal Bowman speaking at his primary watch party. I don't know what time this was, probably about 9:30-ish or 10. I guess 10:40. Here it is.
We should not be well adjusted to a sick society. We should be outraged. We should be outraged when a super PAC of dark money can spend $20 million to brainwash people into believing something that isn't true. We should be outraged about that. We should be outraged when, unfortunately, some so-called Democrats are aligning themselves with radical, racist, right-wing Republicans. We should be outraged about that. And that is why we have so much work still to do. And so I thank everyone for coming out. Please scream to the top of your lungs for all of the volunteers of the...
What happened? Did it end? I mean, this is, and he's right. I mean, we should be outraged about this. But even more importantly, we need to figure out how to win in against this, because it's not going to go away. And that means that candidates have to assume that they're going to face this kind of assault. AOC won her primary last night, like something like 80 to 20, like crushed. And the reason why Bowman was chosen to deploy this money was because they saw some weaknesses there. And they see the same weaknesses in, in Cori Bush's district, but it may not be as, much of a weakness. And we'll see. But if they saw that weakness with Ilhan Omar, if they saw it with Tlaib, if they saw it with AOC, you can bet that money would have been deployed there first. They just went right down the list. And the reason why they didn't see that there with those three is because they knew this money was coming. And they made sure that they spent their time in the district. And, Omar has been, under incredible attack for years. But she was also, in the Minnesota State House and, has long time roots in that district and politicking in that district. So, I mean, there's a little bit of everything here.
Partially is Jamaal took a position on the infrastructure bill that basically the people weren't ready for, or the ground wasn't prepared for, and now people don't know how to interpret it.
Exactly. I mean, they don't understand that he was seeking more, and also seeking more of what Biden had supposedly wanted. And, there was not enough done to make people aware. And again, I'm not denying that it's an incredibly uphill battle when you're fighting that kind of money. But in George Latimer, you got a guy who is handing out county jobs to his girlfriend. He's getting into car accidents in cars that aren't his because he had been driving with an unregistered car because of all of his parking tickets. He's out there spewing racist tropes. And he's going to say that he's going to vote against Joe Biden's like almost, one bullet point of his agenda in his next term. And that was not exploited enough. So, Batty from Cincinnati. Should Bowman run on the WFP ticket or independently to challenge DNC and AIPAC power? I feel like it would send a good message to Democrats. I'm not sure. It wouldn't send a good message to Democrats unless he wins. And I don't know.
He's not going to do that.
I don't know how that he would win. And again, it's also like, I just don't think that there is an opportunity here. The opportunity to teach a lesson to AIPAC and the DNC, and he was, nominally supported by the Democrats. Hakeem Jeffries gave him $5,000. Endorsed him, but in such a quiet way that I don't think anybody realized it. But the time to teach that lesson was yesterday. Running into a sword is not teaching anybody a lesson, except for the fact that your body is permeable by metal. Here is George Latimer, and again, this is like what comes next in a loss like this. Is the spin on why it happened so that it serves those interests the most. And so instead of Latimer saying like, hey, we don't want the people making $500,000 a year on average in my district, they don't want their taxes to go back up. In fact, what they want is their Trump tax cuts plus a return to the deductions for state tax. And instead of saying that, because that wouldn't be as attractive of a thing to say, he talks about extremists.
Not the only one. There are good men and women in Washington who feel the same way we do. And we have to find each other and live with each other. We have to look at arguments of the far right and the far left and say, you cannot destroy this country with your rhetoric and your arguments. We have to have unity all across that continuum. And if you hold a strong belief, you still must work with other people who don't share that belief, because America hangs in the balance.
There's no sentient person who follows politics who thinks that we're going to, that there's any type of, first of all, any type of moderate Republicans. And Latimer is going to find kindred spirits over there who want to keep taxes low on rich people, but that's about it.
I mean, that's his same thing he could have said when he was slow walking desegregation. Look, they got the far leftists and the far rightists. I'm just gonna we're gonna try to take the temperature down on this.
Yep. In a minute, we're going to be talking to Ryan Grimm about this and more. First, a word from our sponsor today. Very easy for you to make, very quick. Delicious meals this summer. Convenient recipes delivered right to your door. All you got to do, choose a meal, select a delivery date, and HelloFresh handles all the meal planning, all the shopping, and the vast majority of the prep. So all you have to do is open your box and get cooking. Want to thank HelloFresh for supporting the Majority Report. Also want to thank HelloFresh for allowing me to make some home-cooked meals for my kid. Get the party started or enjoy a little pre-dinner treat with an appetizer of your choice in every HelloFresh box for free. Go to HelloFresh.com/majority apps for free. It's HelloFresh.com/majority apps for free appetizers for life. One appetizer per item per box while subscription is active. You don't have to worry about planning your meals. You don't have to worry about shopping. They got 50 recipes and even more market items to choose from every single week. Cut down. Here's the thing that I love about HelloFresh. I have used these services in the past. The thing I love about HelloFresh is, there's two things. One is the prep time for all of the meals. It's just not as extensive. Like, it's just the recipes are not as complicated, and they're delicious. And they also have some things that are just like 15 minutes. So I made a one pan, so you don't have that much of a mess, pork stir-fried tacos, and they were delicious. My kid loved them. I loved them. It's so rare this happens. I made some like an Algerian, like a chicken apricot chickpea type of thing. That took a little bit more. That took like 30 minutes, but it was delicious. They have quick and easy recipes. Each week's menu features options that are ready in just 20 minutes or less. Like I say, I've done one of those 15-minute one-pan things. Quicker than delivery, cheaper than delivery significantly, and delicious. They got seasonal produce picked at peak ripeness, delivered straight from the farm to your door in less than a week. Heading out on a vacation, you update your delivery address, enjoy easy HelloFresh meals at your vacation destination. Plans are flexible, so they work with your changing schedule. Discover limited time seasonal recipes from HelloFresh's Taste of Summer series, like Old Bay shrimp and sausage. That sounds pretty good, actually. And grilled steak lettuce wraps, plus so much more. Folks, it's cheaper than going even to the market. There's no waste. Go to HelloFresh.com/majority apps for free appetizers for life. One appetizer item per box while subscription is active. That's free appetizers for life at HelloFresh.com/majority apps. 2 P's on that. Majority apps. That link will be available in the YouTube and podcast description and at majority.fm. Quick break. Be right back with Ryan Grimm. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma is out today. Joining us on the program, returning, Ryan Grimm, D.C. Bureau Chief at the Intercept, co-host of Counterpoints, and, of course, also one of the best-dressed people on this broadcast today.
There you go. What do you think of the shirt?
These
are bicycles. Good. Can you see them?
No. I can't.
Well,
really
they're
see those.
bicycles.
They're too tiny. Well, that's all right. Well, then I would say that there's still an opening for me. All right, let's talk about this. I mean, over the past couple of days, there's, I think, there's been slowly a sense that this was happening. But what's your assessment? Let's start with, why Bowman lost. And obviously, we start with the $15 to $20 million that came in from outside expenditure. But there's other reasons too.
Yes, and I think it really frustrates like Bowman opponents that AIPAC spent so much money that they just can't claim a clean victory now. Because there's an argument to be made, and you know this district very well, that if AIPAC had just completely stayed out of the race, that there's still a chance that Latimer beats Bowman. In fact, Latimer might even be the favorite going into that race, particularly kind of post-fire alarm Bowman. Latimer's a well-known guy in the area. It's not a flaming left-wing district, but dropping $17 million in there changes the equation. Like it just does, and so that you can't disentangle that from what it was. I think. Well, there's a couple of interesting things here. One is that Bowman really helped create AIPAC's super PAC. If you remember, in 2020, when he beat Eliot Engel, DMFI, Democratic Majority for Israel, which was kind of a proto-AIPAC super PAC, it was aligned with AIPAC. A lot of AIPAC donors, a lot of AIPAC folks were involved with it. But AIPAC itself did not have a super PAC. Like, that was a threshold that they had not decided to cross yet. DMFI spent like $2 million plus trying to beat Jamaal Bowman, and Bowman knocked off Engel anyway. And it was around that moment where AIPAC said, you know what, I think we might need to get into this game ourselves. Like, we can't just leave this to DMFI. And then they came through with their super PAC spending more than any single entity has spent in a congressional race, ever. But I think it was, I'm curious for your take on this. Bowman's trip paid for, but like hosted by J Street in 2021 to visit the West Bank, to visit Israel on the West Bank. It seems like that changed him as a person, and changed his understanding of Israel-Palestine politics. Steny Hoyer leads these bipartisan trips every 2 years that are sponsored by AIPAC, and those people get a propaganda trip, and they come back fortified in their support for Israel. Bowman came back, and within like a year of that, had even lost J Street's support because he was so appalled by the conditions on the ground that he saw. And for people who kind of see that up close, that's a very common experience. It's one thing to be told it's apartheid. It's another thing to see it with your own eyes.
I've had multiple conversations, not on camera, with people who were, I went over there and I was thinking that I was going to have a more nuanced take on what's going on. And I was like, whoa, this is really bad. And yes, I believe that it did, I don't know if radicalize is necessarily the right word, but it certainly honed that. And the other thing that I think people forget too is that district, this is the third iteration of that district. And it is only because in 2022, it was different than it was in 2020. And in 2024, it was different than it was in 2022. And each time it got a little bit more wealthy, wealthy suburbs, people who don't want to maybe have the Trump tax cuts rolled back. I think the Jewish population, and again, probably the more conservative Jewish population grew as well in that instance. And so I think that contributed to this as much as anything, in terms of just you got a different demographic that's going on there, and you combine that with that money. I mean, I also think that Bowman made a strategic decision to run against AIPAC and this is also, the environment that we're in because of what Israel's doing in Gaza. But Bowman made it seemed to make a very conscious decision to run against the AIPAC money, as opposed to Latimer. And Latimer, right. I think, he definitely has obviously deep connections, particularly in Westchester. But the stuff, there was a lot of stuff that he was saying that even for a normie Dem, wait a second.
Yeah.
I think the thing that people in Westchester liked about Latimer was we can vote for him and save our Trump tax cuts without it being about that. And Bowman never made them face that decision in some ways, it seems to me.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it also shows how much the politics of race have changed since 2020. In 2020, Elliot Engel went to a George Floyd rally.
Yeah.
And famously had one of the greatest gaffes of all time, where he's caught on a hot mic,
yeah,
he's trying to speak, and the organizers are like, "There's too many electeds here. We can't have everybody speak. We'll be here all day. It's hot." He's like, "Look, I wouldn't even be here if I didn't have a primary. Just let me speak." And that was caught on New York One, and it played into, gaffes really hit you when it plays into an existing weakness. And he was already in trouble because he'd been caught lying about being in the district and actually living in Maryland. And it showed, this is an out of touch guy who's been in office for 40 years or something. And it killed him. Latimer had made so many, what you would call racially tone deaf comments at best throughout this race. And they were just shrugged off by Westchester voters.
Yeah.
They're like, this is not 2020 anymore. We did that. We're it really felt like it was like a page had been turned on that question. White liberals a few years ago would not have tolerated the kinds of stuff that he's been saying.
But I mean, that's hard to. I'd be curious, if there was a way, and there's not. But I'd be curious as to how many people heard him say that. You know what I mean? This is where the money made a difference. It's just there was no space for any type of narrative that that Bowman could have pushed. I don't know how many of the Westchester people knew about the tax cuts. I don't know that anybody knew about the tax cuts. I don't know. Did they know that Latimer was, driving around in a staff car because when he got into an accident because his car was unregistered because he had so many parking tickets that he'd been driving around on a suspended license, that he hired his girlfriend to be a county employee,
county job.
I mean, there was a lot of stuff there, and I don't know, A, how much the Bowman campaign pushed that, or B, if they made a calculated decision we can't change the narrative of this race. We have to sort of play into the fact that the money, we can't fight that money in that way.
It felt like YOLO. It felt like Bowman knew he was going to lose and wanted to go down fighting a principled fight. That's what it felt like towards the end. And I think you're right. Strategically, when say Summer Lee or Cori Bush are going after their opponents for taking AIPAC money, or Sushila Jayapal out in Portland, they don't actually hit AIPAC directly. What they do is they say, this is Republican money, because it is.
Right.
90% of it's Republican money. This is Republican billionaire money coming in to mess with the Democratic primary. Because that's what polling shows, that moves the needle with Democratic voters. There was some polling done in the Portland, Oregon race by one of the campaigns that found that most voters hadn't even heard of AIPAC. So you running against AIPAC, now that might not be the case for a lot of primary voters in Westchester, but in general, saying he has the support of Trump donors is a very damning hit. Saying that they have the support of AIPAC, even among people who support a ceasefire and would call themselves pro-Palestine, it's they're not motivated necessarily to vote on those on that question.
The problem that Bowman had, though, in that situation of saying like he's being supported by Trump money, is that Hillary Clinton and Mondaire Jones come in and basically, neutralize that critique. And so
like,
he's
vote for Latimer,
vote for Latimer, and it's like, well, wait a second, is he a Trump? Is he a Trump stalking horse, or is he a Clinton Democrat? And I would
how do you
submit
think
that
he would have
both.
done? Lauren Boebert, was facing a similar situation where she barely got reelected last time and was probably going to lose in her race. She switched districts. What do you think would have happened if Bowman tried to run against Richie Torres?
I mean, that at least would have been. I think that would have been an interesting race because.
Still would have gotten 20 million spent against him, but
he still would have gotten 20 million spent against him. But it also would have like really filtered into Torres's like the narrative that he was bought and paid for. I mean, it's Latimer did not make his bones or become a national figure talking about Israel and Gaza.
Right.
And so it was much harder to tie that in. It became more about they're coming after me as opposed to like putting up their candidate.
Right.
So it would have been an interesting dynamic, I think, had he done that. I mean, of course,
maybe in 2 years.
Maybe in 2 years. So let's talk about. I was also struck. I just want to say this too. I'm just like looking at like the Bob Good race, and the Freedom Caucus is about to boot out one of the guys in the Freedom Caucus for endorsing a challenger to Bob Good. And this is after Bob Good looks like he's losing, right? And the way that the Democratic Party has sort of like said, well, we're a little bit more tepid on the idea of challenging incumbents, right? Like Gottheimer should be censured. He should be censured by the caucus.
For hypocrisy.
He should be for hypocrisy and for not supporting an incumbent, whatnot. And he won't be, of course. I mean, and Latimer's going to be basically is Gottheimer across the Hudson, essentially. I mean, he's going to be a Joe Manchin figure, I think, within the Democratic caucus, to the extent that happens in Congress. But what happens now in terms of Cori Bush? Like everybody's trying to spin this as if it was about Israel. And it wasn't. The Latimer had no Israel ads, as far as I could tell. Yeah. Maybe there are, cohorts in Westchester who were rallying around Israel on some level, but certainly, like at 20,000 feet, it wasn't about Israel. What's going to happen with Cori Bush? Like, does this mean that she's going to see even more money than she would have, or is it? Yeah, and what is she going to take from this?
I mean, there's only so much money you can spend in St. Louis on the TV market there, and I think they will figure out how much that is, and they'll spend it because I think they'd love to take out 2, if not 3. I think there's still some elements who think that Ilhan Omar is vulnerable as well. She barely held on last time, but was caught by surprise. She's not caught by surprise this time. So we'll see. But yeah, I think Cori Bush is going to see just an absolute avalanche of funding. And, she's got things that, like the way that, United Democracy Project, AIPAC, Super PAC runs these is they poll in the district to see, and this is normal politics. Like they poll in the district to see what's going to land the hardest. And then they just relentlessly run ads on that question. Like with Jayapal out in Portland, it was, about Multnomah County business. Like it was not Israel-Palestine. In St. Louis, it's not going to be about Israel-Palestine. They're going to pick on, probably if I were going to guess, they're going to go after Cori Bush for she hired her boyfriend or husband for some security work on her campaign. And they'll do a 30-second ad accusing her of like corruption or whatever.
Who was incidentally a security guy. I mean, it wasn't like
yes,
he was
right, but
it wasn't
you
like
know,
he was
get it.
a plumber
Right,
and
but-
he got hired to provide security. He that's what he did.
Right, but you play the right kind of music,
Yeah.
and with the right narrator.
Right.
By the end of it, you're like, wow, she should be in prison.
Right.
But then you're also like, oh wait, that's a 30-second political attack ad. So they don't work as well as people think, because people are smart and they know that all of these ads are filled with lies. But if you see them constantly, like it does damage. Like they were able to knock 30 points off Nina Turner's polling. They were able to knock something like 25 points, 30 points off of Summer Lee back in 20 not this cycle but last cycle when she was running, in just a couple of weeks with a couple $1 million in unchecked ads. So it's going to be tough, and she's got a serious opponent. How much has the I don't want to say the defunding, but there's a lot less money in like Justice Democrats. There's the Sanders like movement has fractured in many ways, not the least of which because of Israel's assault on Gaza. How much is that involved here? Like, is there's no cavalry or cavalry? I can't. Cavalry? How do you say that? Yes, that's a good point, and that gives me a chance to flog my book that I've got back here on the squad. Like the Summer Lee's race is a really good example. Like, so she was up 25 or 30 points. AIPAC comes in with millions of dollars of attack ads, darkening her skin, saying she's not a good enough Democrat. And without a counter to that, she went from the far and away front runner to neck and neck in the final couple of weeks. But then she was able to get up on air because she had raised a decent enough money and just showed a picture of her on stage with Joe Biden. And she's like, look, I'm a Democrat. Joe Biden thinks I'm a Democrat. And then Justice Democrats J Street, which is very important because J Street was involved at the time. Now they've kind of broken with that coalition. Working Families Party, Indivisible, they put together $1 million or $2 million and were able to get back on the air to counter the AIPAC ads and say, no, Summer Lee's good. And so then her plummet basically stabilized. But if not for that couple $1 million that came from the outside at the end, Summer Lee probably loses. She only won, I think, by triple digits, or less than 1,000 votes. And you saw Nina Turner didn't really have that last minute push, and then it ended up losing by a few thousand votes in her race after that avalanche. So I think you're right that there certainly aren't the resources out there. And like the Portland race is a good example. Like that's just a kind of random open seat to replace Earl Blumenauer. And without even disclosing the money until after the race, They dropped more than $5 million in that race. Just quietly, $5 million just to wipe out Pramila Jayapal's sister, just because it's her sister. And there was no WFP, Justice Democrats, Indivisible, J Street, kind of couple $1 million ad buy to come in and push back against that. It was just kind of uncontested for the most part.
Have you heard? I mean, I imagine Cori Bush's team sees what's happening with Bowman, a couple of months ago, and starts to prepare for this. And they start, I don't know how much communication they can have with some of those outside groups, but are there outside groups that are starting to that have been gearing up for this and saying okay, Bowman, we may not be able to go in and do anything, but Cori Bush is going to be the firewall.
Yeah, I think they are. The Bush race is winnable in a way that it was going to be much harder to win Bowman. So I think you're right that these Justice Democrats and a handful of WFP and allies are going to put everything that they possibly can marshal into defending her. That's going to be nowhere near what AIPAC can marshal. Now, it should be noted, by the way, Bernie Sanders is sitting on, I think, people can go to Open Secrets and check, about $9 million cash in hand. That's a lot of money. Now, Rashida Tlaib, I think, gave $500,000 to the defend Bowman effort, she's got a lot more than that, and she doesn't have an opponent. So I have no doubt she's going to come in and support Bush. AOC could as well. She's got fundraising capacity. So with the combination of the existing squad members and the outside groups, if they worked together, they could bring enough money that they're playing at par. Like they'll still get, they'll still get outspent, but they'd at least be like have enough to be in the ball game, and that every voter would, have
at least heard one time, have heard like some pushback. I mean, the Bowman race feels like it was like 5-1, 6-1.
Like that,
maybe more. I have a feeling like we're gonna find out in
mailers and
6 weeks. It's gonna be like it was closer to like 12-1.
And they had the money to do wild things, like one organization spent like at least $1 million or maybe more registering a couple thousand Republicans and independents.
Yes, and registering, and from I think like some of the more orthodox communities, and those are guaranteed votes. I mean, once you start getting into some of like these real sort of any type of fundamentalist community, it doesn't take much to get everybody on buses and be like, you're voting now. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's literally how it works. Or, we'll see you at here's your ballot, send it in, or give it back. I mean, this is not, that's the beauty of like those type of fundamentalist worlds. It's like, if you need something done, you just tell them and they'll do it.
They're going to do it. Yes.
I read about that. That to me is, I think I saw that. I read that about that effort, I don't know, about 3 or 4 or 5 days ago. And when I saw the early voting numbers, that's what it made me think of. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no way you're getting those type of early voting numbers without somebody sitting there going, is someone paid to be there going, you got to fill out that vote now.
And that's what you can do when you've bought up all the airtime and you still have money left. When you're sitting around and your problem is we have more money than we know what to do with, like, how can we spend money? And somebody's like, well, why don't we register a bunch of people and get them to
And we should also say that the reason why that is sequenced that way is because the person making that decision gets, what is it now, 10, 15, 20% VIG on what they spend on media, right? I mean, that's the way it works. Right. I don't know if people, we used to talk about this a lot more, but in terms of the at least the Democratic consultant class, when they go buy, it's like a general contractor. Like the general contractor will I'm going to take 10% on materials and 20% on the subs. And so if you get your, you get your new roof and your plumbing and your HVAC through your general contractor, there's a 20% markup by the time it gets to you. It's the same thing with media buys. That doesn't happen with organizing on the ground. You don't get a markup on that. You just get like some 3% fee or something. Mm-hmm. And so you don't get to that until you've completely, essentially, like drained any opportunity to do the media buys.
Yeah, the media buy cartel is incredible, and it's an alliance between the networks, the people that receive the money for the ads, and the people that buy them, and they really have the campaigns by the short and curlies are like, look, you want to get your ad up in 2 days, like, I know how to do that, and they're not going to take your call. Like, they're only doing it through me. And they're only doing it through these buyers because the buyers make it worth their while to keep that cartel in place. It's really incredible. There must be so many boats in the Chesapeake Bay that are floating there thanks to this 15% cut that they just take right off the top.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder why we have this money in politics problem, and the reason is there's so many people making money off of that money.
And boats are expensive to maintain a boat.
Oh yeah, I've heard all the jokes about boats.
you gotta keep those media buys coming.
Well, Worcester is the largest city in the the second largest city, I think, in the country, not on a navigable waterway. So I never had that problem. We literally cemented over the Blackstone Canal, but that's another matter for another time. So we should be paying attention to Cori Bush trying to marshal some forces against this. Is there another person that AIPAC or their affiliates have decided to target, or do they feel like if they can take out Bush and Bowman, they've sent the message?
I think if they could, in their fever dream, take Ilhan Omar out, they would be delighted at that. They shied away from her last time because they thought they had no shot. Then they were frustrated when they're like, oh wait, we almost beat her. Like, and there was no we, because they didn't really get involved. There were some fringe pro-Israel groups, but AIPAC itself didn't get involved. So that's the wild card, I think, is whether or not they're so flush and so confident that they go for Omar too.
When is that? When is her? I guess she's.
That's usually August or late August, September.
August. Oh, really? That's a late one for.
I remember it's always late. When is the Minnesota primary? Yeah.
August 13th, I guess. So that's around the same time as Cori Bush. So they're going to be spending.
Those are tough because those are low. Those are low turnout. It's August. No, people aren't paying attention. That can play in either.
That can cut both ways, right?
Yeah, it can.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Julian Assange. This has been really like a 10-year, I guess, saga.
Mm-hmm.
I have found the sort of like the case against Assange to be really difficult to get a hold on what's going on there, because there has been sort of like, there was the original case that involved Chelsea Manning and her essentially, well, this is in dispute, I guess, on some level, leaking to WikiLeaks these State Department cables and some footage, very famous footage of from Iraq of U.S. military hitting people who are just going to basically help an injured person,
like a Reuters photographer, and
and which is, just as a side note, I feel like we see footage like this every day now coming out of Gaza, and it doesn't make any type of splash whatsoever. And I remember at the time, there was a lot of controversy as to like whether this was, a public service at all, because that has something to do with it. Like if it is newsworthy, that's how news outfits have always justified taking top secret material and publishing it. And there was two elements of that. Was it newsworthy, and how much sort of national security damage did it do? In terms of the newsworthiness, everybody, I was doing MSNBC on a bi-weekly basis at that time, doing Radigan's show and a couple others. And every time they'd be like, is it newsworthy? And then the next story they were talking about came from those cables. Like literally, like every news outlet for years were developing news stories around this right next to their, is this newsworthy stuff that was leaked? It's like, are you kidding? This was, it was clearly newsworthy.
And almost any book today written about any foreign policy issue, it relies on those cables.
They
continue,
and internationally too. Every day you could look into like the German headlines, the Italian. It was all over the world, and it was clearly, and
it helped spark the Arab Spring.
Yes, and it was never clear to me that there was any type of like real compromise of like U.S. national security
Right.
assets, although that was a claim in the charges brought against him. But then there was, subsequent to that, there was another round of stuff that had to do with like the DNC and whatnot. So just give us a broad overview. Ultimately, the plea deal that he made is not great from a press freedom perspective, but just walk us through this.
So at least a jury didn't, from a press freedom perspective, what we can be grateful for is that a jury did not find him guilty, and an appeals court did not affirm a jury's guilty verdict. Like, the only thing that was proved is that if you keep somebody in a maximum security prison in the UK facing extradition for years, they will eventually be willing to plead guilty for their freedom. So from that perspective, I think this week was a win for press freedom, even though he did end up pleading guilty. Now, on the question of 2016, that actually didn't even show up in the entire underlying indictment. He ended up only pleading guilty to one charge, but even if he had pled guilty to every single thing that he was indicted for, 2016 didn't come up at all. It was only the Chelsea Manning situation, and they also dropped the publishing charge, which is like that's good from a
press perspective.
Like 4 or more of the charges were for publishing classified information, and you're like, no, that's not a crime. Like, that has never been a crime. It is like neither you or I have ever like signed any paperwork to get classified, clearances that I know of. I certainly haven't. Maybe you have.
I couldn't say.
And so, we're not restricted from publishing whatever we want. It's the First Amendment. And also, he's not even American. He's been to the U.S. like once to hold the press conference. That's the other bizarre thing about so many people who call him guilty of treason or a traitor. Right. It's like, am I a traitor to Saudi Arabia? Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Like, he's Australian and he's barely ever been here. So there was this exchange that he had with Chelsea Manning, and this is the thing that they get him for, but it's so thin. He's chatting with her on the chat that they later obtained, and she said, basically, I've sent you everything I can find. Like, if I find anything else, would you be interested in it? And he said, and it sounded like lawyerly, he said, in my experience, curious eyes never run dry. Like, and you can ding him for the like purple prose a little bit. But what he's saying is the same thing that all journalists say all the time. Yeah, I'm always interested in new information. They used that line to say that he was now kind of assisting her in this,
or directing her, or soliciting her to do this, as opposed to being in just receipt of it.
But your journalists always solicit. Like, that's what we do. Like, we ask for information, and the idea that we're just going to sit here just waiting, like, that's not serious. So the other thing they came after him for, or she said, well, if I go back into the system, they're going to know it was me, and then I'll get caught. And he's like, well, maybe we can figure out a way to cloak your identity when you go in there. And that's where they say, well, now he's a hacker.
Right.
Because he tried to help with this. But to me, what about when Woodward and Bernstein, said, all right, let's meet in the parking garage, or I'm going to put a plant, famously, they're like, if I have a plant so to the left of my apartment, that means meet me in the parking lot. If it's to the right, it means I can't meet, or whatever. Like, they had their signals set up. Today, we use Signal, we use Proton Mail, and we tell sources how to use Signal and how to use Proton Mail if they don't know how to already use those. That's just basic source protection work. Now, he happens to be a little bit more sophisticated in what he can recommend when it comes to source protection. But if you go to like the New York Times or other places that have secure drop, like, there will be instructions on there about how to use secure drop to securely leak to the New York Times. does that make them hackers complicit in?
Well, the difference between we can protect your identity from your contact with us versus we can protect your identity from your contact with
and that does get dicey. There are conservative lawyers who would tell us at the Intercept, like, don't do that.
Right. I mean, that becomes.
I have a looser like First Amendment rule around that, but you're right. It's
that's a grayer area. But he said that lawyerly thing, and it reminds me, like, we had a guy at Air America who I think it's public knowledge. The guy's been arraigned at the very least in Guam. He had a controversy about a bunch of other things. And I remember asking, like, one of the other executives who was there after this guy left, like, what was the deal with that guy? And he goes, my lawyer has said the best way to avoid litigation is to say this: I would not let that guy clean my toilet with a toothbrush. And that was like, he didn't want to say anything other. It was all just sort of like, there was some structure to that statement that said that he was, kept out of litigation. And so we have this now. Where is Assange in terms of like his relationship with WikiLeaks? Is he going to go back and start again at WikiLeaks? Has he been managing them from afar? And what has been the evolution of WikiLeaks, over that time? Because, I think there was, people forget that WikiLeaks was also the ones who leaked the stuff about and this was a scandal way before I even heard the word WikiLeaks. I was aware of the scandal about supposedly British scientists working on climate change were faking climate change, and because of the nature of stuff that was leaked. People forget that WikiLeaks had released that stuff. That was one of their early things that they had done. And there's definitely been sort of like what seemed to be selective leaks at various times that are not as much about transparency as I think like at different times their mission has been.
I don't know how much he's been involved. I don't think he's been involved much. And also his from talking to we've interviewed his brother on our program a number of times. From talking to him, his mental health has been deeply compromised by the isolation that he's been held in over the years, his physical health and his mental health. And so I think it remains to be seen, like, what role he's going to take at WikiLeaks going forward. It'd be interesting to see if his release kind of brings WikiLeaks back to the fore when it comes to leakers. I think whistleblowers stopped thinking of it as the place where they were going to take information, even though it was still going.
Right.
It just without him, it just didn't have the same punch. So we'll see. Maybe it comes back.
From your perspective, and I haven't followed this as closely as I had maybe 5 or 6, 7, 8 years ago, or more. Has WikiLeaks' mission altered or been consistent, or how would you characterize their mission over the years?
What he has said, and I think it's worth considering this. Like, so he was whacked in 2016 for, why didn't you leak Hillary? Why didn't you leak Donald Trump's emails? Like, why didn't you go after the Republicans? And what he said at the time was, we publish what we get, and like, as an investigative journalist, I understand that.
Right.
Like, I'll often have people say, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?" I'm like, I'd love to do that. Like, give me those documents. But like, these are the documents that I have. And so when now he also made an argument, and we reported on this at the Intercept. He had an argument for why it was better for the world if Trump won than if Hillary won, and he hated Hillary. Like, there's no question. Like, those things are true, but it's also true that if he doesn't get leaked those emails, he doesn't do Hillary's emails. Like, he didn't go out hunting for them. And so what all journalistic operations can fall prey to is, they are a vehicle for other people's agendas.
Right.
Like, that's the case whether you're talking about leaking the Pentagon Papers or anything else. Like, it's just like that's inescapable. But he's also somebody with outspoken opinions, and I think the public has a hard time kind of reconciling those two different things. Now, would he have leaked Trump's emails? I think so, because I think above all, he's somebody who loves to break news. I think if he had gotten that, and then the other vulnerability for this entire system is statecraft. And I think in ProPublica, the Intercept, the Consortium for International Journalists, or whatever it's called, who got the Panama Papers, are these coming from citizen whistleblowers? Are they coming from intelligence agencies? I think some of the leaks that we've gotten have come from various intelligence agencies. Can't prove it, but I suspect
and they have an agenda. Like, we want to discredit this
we don't
part
like
of
the
our
Emiratis,
government or that
like,
government or whatnot. Wasn't there any type of contact between WikiLeaks and the Trump, if not campaign, those who orbit the campaign? I mean, that to me seems to be the most controversial stuff in terms of where Stone, look, I get the idea of I happen to have an opinion that I don't like this politician, and maybe that's why somebody knows that I'm a good person to distribute this stuff, but I would have distributed it, if I had gotten other stuff. I get that. I mean, it's better to keep your opinion to yourself in that way, so that you don't, you can't be, people don't think that question, why your motive's there. But it's another thing to also in some way give a heads up to that other candidate or their team that hey, this is dropping, so use it. It's one thing to be used by a source, because that's always a danger. It's another to allow yourself to be used by the players, particularly in advance, it seems to me.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the exact details of that, but I feel like there was some communication with Donald Trump Jr. It's a tiny amount.
Stone, I think.
And there was definitely Roger Stone was claiming that he had some contacts, and you always have to take everything Roger Stone says with a grain of salt. He had that famous tweet where he said, "Podesta, your time in the barrel is coming up." Don't do that.
That's a pretty good guess.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I tend to think that why, that's a pretty good guess.
Yeah.
So,
and why, Roger Stone's such a moron. Why are you even saying that? Also, they didn't need WikiLeaks, even if they were trying to help the Trump campaign, teeing them up and tipping them off. What does it even help? It's a bunch of clowns running that operation.
Well, I know, but that's not the way you assess
the
that,
principle
right?
the principle is right. You don't want to be coordinating.
No, that to me seems really suspect. I mean, all the other stuff aside, people always, your sources always have motivation to doing this, and I would say probably.
I don't think we'll ever get to the bottom of what happened with Roger Stone. It could have been several layers of removed that had heard rumors from WikiLeaks. I think it's pretty clear they weren't coordinating directly with Roger Stone, but Roger Stone has tentacles everywhere and picked something up and is always trying to look cooler.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that Stone has a memoir in a safe that he's waiting until he's dead, but I still don't know that we could believe anything in there anyway.
I know that's the saddest part.
Yep.
It'll be fun to read, but we won't know if any of it's true.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious about his role in the Elliot. What is it, Spicer?
Elliot Spitzer.
Spitzer, yeah, Spitzer.
Him and Trump is the interesting story.
Spitzer and Trump.
No, that Trump and Roger Stone was even Trump had that. That's the word that there was some the two of them together were going after Spitzer.
Oh, I'm quite convinced that it was actually like some of the people from Citibank, and there was a couple of those bankers who had been looking for a long time to get Spitzer. And
They had the wires, right? I mean,
what's
oh yeah, well the Fed had them too. Yeah.
it was the what do they call it? Structuring the withdrawals. To get the $9,500 on Friday, and then $9,500 the next week, or something like that.
Right, and you're the bankers, and you look at that, it looks a little suspicious, and you're like, wait a minute, is that the guy who's trying to take us down?
Oh no, I don't think the way that works. I think it was the bankers have no, the bankers and Stone had, I would say, private investigators. They probably tracked all that stuff, and then they figured out. Then they reverse engineered how do we make it like somebody else flagged this, and that's and start it that way. That's I'm convinced about it, but that's for another day. Ryan Grimm, sad day, because I think Bowman was a good congressman and a smart guy. I remember interviewing him when he was running in that race. I guess it was in in the run up to 2020. And I was really impressed with him. He was he was an educator, and just seemed to be very attuned to educators can be very sort of like a nuanced thinkers, and I thought he was good. I would love to see him run against Richie Torres. That would be great. From your mouth. Ryan Grimm, DC Bureau Chief at the Intercept, co-host Counterpoints, also one of the best dressed in the YouTube world, you could be one of the best dressed these days.
Well, I owe it all to you.
In the YouTube world, let's not
fix my tie.
Yeah. Incidentally, I was going to say your knots are looking a lot better. Sometimes it takes a carrot, sometimes it takes a stick. It's a
village.
Ryan Grimm, thanks so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
All right, see ya.
All right, folks, we got to take a break and head to the fun half of the program, wherein we will talk a little bit. There was a couple of races that were in New York that were positive. We had at least one DSA member win a state Senate seat. Did I get rid of all my papers here?
Is that Claire Valdez?
Yes.
The 37th district in the state assembly.
In the state assembly. That's in Queens. And she's organizer with the UAW too, I think. And so WFP also had some wins in Albany. Common Council member Gabriela Romero, public defender, and Chloe Pierce, both defeated supposed moderate camp opponents. Social Democratic Assemblywoman Sarahana Shrestha somewhere in the Hudson Valley beat Gabby Madden and the state assembly. So, there were some wins there. And for whatever it's worth, a lot of Donald Trump endorsed candidates didn't win, but I think a lot of times his endorsements, the value of them are overstated when he's not on the ballot. All right, we're going to take a break, head into the fun half. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. Oh, I want to remind you. Tomorrow night, we're going to be doing debate coverage. Now, look, we need your help because I saw Tim Pool talking about this with Steven Crowder. It's so funny to watch them have a conversation together. Sometimes when, as a parent, people who are parents will know this. If you got kids who are like in elementary school or preschool, it's always fun to like go in and see how they talk to other kids. but they were talking about how YouTube is basically CNN's going to come in and ding everybody because they want to make all the money from this debate and don't want to have other people provide commentary over to what.
Well, it's funny listening to Crowder and.
Oh yeah, they're saying that it's going to rig the election.
Well, they're saying they don't want people to fact check in real time, like as if that's what Crowder and Tim Pool did. Crowder saying, "Yeah, we did the Don't Stop the Steal election stream that got pulled down." Yeah, because you can look at the Jose Not a J YouTube breakdown of what Crowder was saying on election night, and YouTube should have taken that down.
Right,
for blatant lying.
Now CNN is doing this. YouTube is just basically stepping back, and so we're probably not going to have the title of the night. It's just going to be more like it's party time.
Fair use party time.
Yeah, fair use party time might be good, or something like Sam's big debate. Something like that.
Fair use.
We're going to have to come up with something. And you're going to be aware we're going to have backup channels. We may end up having to send a lot of people to Rumble but probably Twitch or TikTok.
Rumble, it'd be interesting to see if Rumble.
Supposedly, according to Crowder and Tim Pool, that
it's the pirate zone.
It's the pirate zone.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's going to make it hard for them to get advertisers, I am in favor of.
Either we get to stream or CNN sues the venture capitalists who are putting all the money behind it.
Exactly.
Win-win.
Win-win. But we will endeavor to bring it to you. You can always.
So we might be on TikTok.
And that's what I'm saying. We might be.
No, we will be on TikTok.
Yeah, we better. I just got that new computer there and
I might just use that to play.
2 hours yesterday building that new desk.
Just going to use that to play Red Dead.
Well, we better get 2 controllers. But TikTok, Twitch, Rumble, Venmo. I mean, not Venmo. What video? What was it?
No,
Vimeo?
we're not going on Vimeo anymore. We'll be on the app.
And audio will always be on the app. So, worst case scenario, you watch the video somewhere and sync it up with our audio. I don't know how we would do that, but maybe we got to come up with a way of doing that. All right, folks. Again, jointhemajorityreport.com. I mean, we just got a new computer so that we can go live on TikTok, reach the kids, as it were, and
save them from Tim Pool.
Fight the Chi-Coms, whatever we're doing. Save them from Tim Pool. And those computers do not grow on trees because they were all picked. And now they have to be grown on special computer farms. So your support as a sustaining member allows this show to survive and thrive. Join themajorityreport.com. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, hot chocolate. Tomorrow night, I think the debate is going to be sponsored by Sunset Lake, Sabadell.com, which is only going to be one of the many products that we're going to be involved in. We may have a special guest in studio Thursday night with us who should be pretty funny. I mean, he's moderately funny.
George Latimer.
George Latimer will be here. On Friday, in the fun half, we are going to have a special post-debate analysis from Saul Seder. He will be live in studio. His last day of school is today. And so he will be joining us with some post-debate analysis. And apparently he's got a couple of things he's going to say to embarrass me. He will not tell me what it is.
And he's made you agree to not censor him.
And I have agreed not to censor him. So be prepared for a lot of disinformation. Bradley, what's happened on ESPN?
Yes, on ESPN yesterday, we reacted to the Florida Panthers emerging victorious in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, as well as the emerging WNBA playoff race, and J.J. Redick's, the Los Angeles Lakers' choice of J.J. Redick as their new head coach. We will be back on Monday at our usual time at 4 p.m. and youtube.com/ESPN show for older streams and clips if you want to check those out.
Matt.
Last night on Left Reckoning, we had Seamus Malekafzali on to talk about Israel's potential consent manufacturing with regards to striking Lebanon and also the Iranian elections, and talked about Tucker Carlson apologizing for J. Edgar Hoover ahead of Juneteenth. What's up?
Somebody just said this on the IM, and I just Googled this. The debate's going to be simulcast on MSNBC.
Well, yes, they have the big corporate partners are allowed to simulcast it, and they even mentioned that on Pool and Crowder, that those people have the rights to do it, but if you're going to do it online, that's where it becomes.
But I also think the terms are they can't comment on it until after it's over. Like there can't be any.
But what if we take the MSNBC stream?
Yes.
And it may not be online, but we can take it through YouTube TV.
Yeah, that's what we should do, yeah.
That is definitely what we should do.
Yep.
Keep that on the low. Can we cut that part of the show? See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Denner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total
Pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder. Fun half. Oh boy, I got to update this computer. I just saw it's running Mac. It's running
Prepare for
OS
Y2K.
1015. Honestly, like some of these things we really.
And neither of them is good. I've experienced both Windows and Macs, and both of them have really annoying little
Yeah, they're
hurdles
all.
and hiccups.
There's nothing. Demian, was Ryan wearing jorts? I don't know. Dave the Brainworm. Sam, who crowded in the pool? The 20-minute poop report. Will Saul be bringing props? Just a warning to Saul, props are still considered hacky. Steve CJ, I feel a little conflicted on Assange because of learning